So some people, if you're using Mac, I think I will try to find some other alternative. Okay, so you can just see this. Then maybe I will try to find alternative software. So because I think some people have had that issue. Uh, I suggested this because this is a free software. So I don't want to propose any software which you have to pay. So that is the reason I will propose this. But there are so many, so I think I will give alternatives. Not a problem. Okay. So you check which one you are having. So if you are having old computers which are running on XP, you can use this XP32. So if you are using a 32-bit operating system, then you download this. If you are using 64-bit operating system, you can download this. Okay. So for those who don't know how to find this, what you do is you just go to your computer, my computer. Okay. So if you click on this my computer, right click, and then you go for this properties. Okay. Then it will display an image and it will show the operating system. Okay. So for my computer, it is 64-bit operating system with 64 base processor. So you have to check this before downloading. Okay, you just right click on the my computer on your my computer and then go for properties. Okay, in the properties you'll get this. Okay, system type 64-bit. If it is 64, if it is written 64-bit, then you can go for 64-bit here. If it is something like 32-bit, then you go for 32-bit. And if you are using XP operating system, which is your old operating system, then you can go for 32-bit operating system. Okay, so you just keep this download. If possible, you can install it, and also download the POWCOD. Okay, so this, if you click here, so again there is two things. One is inorganic, and then there is other one. So right now for practice, you just download inorganic. Reason is it is smaller in size. Okay, so it is around 220 MB. But if you go for this complete, then it will be around 1.7 GB. Okay, so it will be too much. So it will take a long time. So for time being, you can download this inorganic thing. Okay, so this is the latest July 2020 version. So you can take this. You can download this, and then you keep it ready. So later I will show how to start. Okay. So when we come to the practice, I will show you. Okay. So download these two, and then you keep it ready in your laptop. Okay. Okay. Fine. So I will go back to presentation. Okay. Okay. So till now we learned about some basic things. Okay. So diffraction, what is diffraction, what is neutron diffraction, all those things. So now, uh, why you need this X-ray diffraction? So you may be working in different fields. So for example, you may be doing some bulk materials like some perovskites. So servers showing you PR, SR, MnO3, La, or barium titanate, all those things. It may be a magnetic material, it may be a piezoelectric material, it may be a ferroelectric material. So you are preparing these things by solid state or sol gel, whatever method. Okay. So these may be your interest, or maybe some battery material like LiMn2O4, or layered materials like La2 Mn2O5 or La2 uh, CO2O5, something like that. Okay, or you may be doing some nanometers by sol gel, hydrothermal, whatever it is. Okay, so you may be doing all these kind of things, KO2, or you dope some uh, um, iron or cobalt in that titanium to get your uh, magnetoresistance. Okay, so if you have any question, someone raise the hand. Uh, so I will take questions later. Okay. So or you may be doing some thin films like super capacitor thin films, maybe thermoelectric thin films, or some intermetallic, or you may be some may be doing some industrial samples. Okay. So first thing, once you prepare, the first step your guide would ask is go and do the X-ray diffraction. So the reason is it may not be the X-ray diffraction may not be the main thing for your studies. You may be studying about capacitors or superconductors or some thermoelectrics or battery materials or something like that. Okay, so your main study would be something else, but still, the first step would be once you synthesize any material or you buy some material from Sigma Aldrich. First thing is you will do the X-ray diffraction. The reason for that is you need to know some of the uh, some things. So what are these things? You need to know the phase purity. You need to know the quantification, crystallite size, amorphous, stress, strain. So uh, I'm not big fan of this stress and strain with respect to lab X-ray, but still we'll do that. Okay. Or you may be if you're doing some nanoparticles, you want to do some crystallite size. Okay. Or if you're doing some thin films, there is also possibility to get the thickness from reflectance measurement. Okay. So these are the reasons why first step would be always to do X-ray diffraction. Okay. So first you should know whether it is pure phase, because in some cases, like for example in barium titanate, you are using barium carbonate, titanium oxide, or something like that, and you try to heat both of them at some temperature to get pure phase. Okay, pure phase in the sense it is BaTiO3, but you may not have if you are not heating at sufficiently high temperature, like you're taking barium carbonate, you're taking titanium oxide, and you're heating at 500 degree. This may not give you barium titanate. It may be still a mixture of barium carbonate or barium with the titanium. Okay, so or maybe it is a secondary phase. So you should know the phase before going into the physical characterization, like other properties. Okay, physical properties. If it is not a pure phase, then there's no meaning in doing those. That is the reason most of you, first thing what you do is you do a X-ray diffraction. Okay. So in our workshop, we are going to cover all these things except maybe thickness. Okay. So we will study how to do the phase purity, how to check the phase purity. If it is some composites, maybe like you are using some KO2 with CuO, or maybe titanium oxide with zinc oxide mixing. Okay, so then how to quantify these phases? Weight percent, or what is the weight percent of titanium oxide? What is the weight percent of zinc oxide? So those quantification we are going to do by retool refinement. Okay, so that you are going to learn in this workshop. So also you will also learn about some crystallinity. So I will try to cover this. And stress strain, it was asked by the organizer. So I will try to cover this, and crystallite size for nanoparticles. Okay. So these things I'm going to cover. Okay. So first classical example is your titanium dioxide. So most of the people would have known about this titanium dioxide. So that is the reason I am just giving this example. Okay. So if you take titanium dioxide, there are different phases like anatase, rutile, brunklite. Okay, so most of them they work for either anatase or rutile form. The reason is they will be looking for uh, some kind of physical properties. Okay, for example, so here if you take just anatase or rutile, if you see the physical appearance, they look almost same. They will be little bit they are almost like white or maybe a little bit of yellowish. Okay, so this is the physical appearance, and if you calculate a band gap by using UV absorbance or UV diffraction, then in that case, if you take for anatase, it is around 3.2, and if you take for rutile, it is around 3 electron volts. So very close. So if you have any experimental error, then you may not be it may not be easy to distinguish which is anatase, which is rutile. Okay. Then if you even take the refractive index, so it will be 2.613 and then 2.901. Okay, for rutile, and then for anatase it is around almost close, very close. Okay, but interestingly, what happens is if you take your anatase, this is optically negative. Okay, but if you take your rutile, it is optically positive. That means there is a big difference in optical properties. So how to distinguish them is the easiest method is by using your X-ray diffraction. Okay. So if you see the first lines, diffractograms, this is for your rutile phase. Okay, pure rutile phase, you will get lines like this. But if you take anatase, you can see this is having a different pattern. This is not same as a rutile form. And if you have, for example, if you have some mixture, then what happens? You'll have lines from both anatase and rutile phase. So this is how you can distinguish your titanium oxide. For just an example, okay, classical example. But we will go in depth. Okay, in detail, you will see other examples later. Okay, this is one of the example for your why you need the X-ray diffraction. Okay, so you may ask, what is the difference? So anatase is normally a low temperature phase. Okay, you are going to stabilize this at very low temperature, maybe around 500 to 600. So if you take your anatase and if you start heating, that means you just put it in a furnace, and then if you keep increasing the temperature, so around 700 you will start seeing the rutile. Okay, so this, for example, if this is the sample which is heated at 500 degrees C, this is a pure anatase. If I take a sample which is heated at 650 or 675, then I will start seeing these two phases. Okay, and if I further increase, maybe around 800 or 900, then what happens? It will completely convert into rutile. Okay, this is irreversible. Irreversible means I cannot come back from rutile to anatase. Okay, so if in case if you are interested in anatase, then what happens? You are going to lose the anatase phase, so you won't get this anatase phase. Okay, so that is the reason why you need this X-ray diffraction. Okay, to know the phase purity. This is a phase purity. Okay, then this is one more complex example. So this is I have some three, maybe 2-3 publication on this. So this kind of material. So if you take SrFeO3, so in this case Sr is in 2 plus and Fe should be in 4 plus. Only then you can have O3. Okay. If not, what happens? You will have deficiency. If your iron is very difficult to keep in 4 plus. You need to have a highly oxidative state when you are doing this synthesis. If not, what happens? It will just form some other phases. So how to identify this phase is by X-ray diffraction. Okay. One thing you can do more salt titration, but other thing is just a simple X-ray diffraction. Okay. So if you take O3, complete 3, then it will be a cubic form, Pm minus 3m. So sir explained this again yesterday. Okay, so it is a cubic form, and if you are having less oxygen like O2.87, then it will go to tetragonal. Okay, less symmetry. And if you further decrease like 2.75, then this will be orthorhombic. Okay, and the interesting thing is if you further decrease this oxygen content, okay, O2.5. So then in this case, what happens? You'll have iron is in close to 3. So in that case, what happens? You will have orthorhombic different symmetry. Okay, so this is a thing. Now, if I take the same O2.5 and if I start introducing oxygen, how by using high pressure oxygen or maybe just annihilate in oxygen atmosphere, then I can go back to O3. So this is reversible process. Okay, that means I can go from complete oxygen to oxygen deficient, and from oxygen deficient to complete oxygen. Okay, so this is reversible process compared to the previous one, which is irreversible process. Okay, so these are the uses of some of the uses of your X-ray diffraction. Okay, okay. So now I will just I'm going to introduce you the instrumentation of the X-ray diffraction. Okay, so this is the typical modern X-ray diffractometer. Okay, the previous one what I showed the Debye Scherer diffractometer. It is very old. Now you have the technology has advanced a lot. So you have a new. This is your new diffractometer. So I will explain one by one. Okay, so there is you need X-ray source. So this is your X-ray tube, which will generate your X-rays, and then this middle portion is your sample. So you are going to prepare the sample, and then how to get it out. So this is your sample. You prepare your sample like this, and then you put like you place it here. Okay. Then what happens? You need a detector. So this whatever you are showing here, seeing here, there's some silver dome. This is your uh, gas detector. So now you have more modern solid state detector. So this is from Panadical, but it can this is the same for all whether you're using Philips XRD, Bruker or Rigaku, doesn't matter. Okay, so there are so many different things. It doesn't matter. These parameters will be same. Okay, or these parts will be same. Okay, so X-ray tube, you send the X-rays, it will fall on the sample, then it is going to go and it is going to fall into the detector. So if it is constructive interference, you get X-ray in the detector. If it is destructive interference, you won't get any X-ray in the detector. That's all. Okay, very simple. That is why I explained the X-ray diffraction in the previous part. Okay. Now, why do you need all these things? So you have something called a solar slits. You have divergence slits. You have something called mask. You have anti-scattering, receiving, solar, monochromator, all these things. Okay. So in most of the diffractometers, some may be absent. Like for example, solar slits. This may not be there for a old X-ray diffractometer. Okay, very old diffractometer it may not be there, but rest will be there. Okay, so I will tell why you need that. Okay, so this is your typical X-ray diffractometer. So it can be tabletop or it can be a big regular standby diffractometer. These things are common, and there is something called as goniometer. What is goniometer? These are two circles. Okay, there are two circles. One circle is attached with X-ray tube. Okay, wheel. It is like a wheel. One wheel is it is your X-ray tube is sitting on the first wheel, and there is one more wheel which is behind this, which we don't see. Okay, so this wheel is going to hold this detector. Okay, so when these two wheels move, one is moving in clockwise, other one is moving in anti-clockwise. So when the first wheel is moving, your X-ray tube is moving, and when the second this is clockwise, your the second wheel is moving anti-clockwise, so detector is going up again. Okay, from this anti-clockwise. Okay, so in this way you can change the theta and 2 theta. Okay, so this is your modern diffractometers. Even in some case, if it is a tabletop diffractometer, what happens is your X-ray tube is fixed. So your X-ray tube is fixed, and your sample and detector is going to move. Okay, so this is going to be in one single arm. That means your sample holder and detector is going to be in a single arm, and this entire thing is going to move. Okay, so that is for only few cases, which is for mostly for your tabletop. Okay, so in any case you will have 2 theta. Okay, theta theta uh, movement. Okay, okay, so this is your movement, how you change the theta. So next, this is just I'm showing the uh, individual parts. Okay, so this is your X-ray tube. You have your X-ray tube. X-rays are coming from your X-ray tube, and is going to fall on the sample. And then what happens? Is the uh, diffracted. Okay, just okay. So the diffracted. Okay, give me just a minute. Okay. Okay, sorry. So it was some. Okay. So now, if you the X-ray is coming from tube, it is falling on sample, then it is going to come back to your detector. Okay, detector, it can be just your gas detector, or it can be photodiode. It is just a photodiode which is taking the light which is coming in, and then it is converting into some uh, electrical or some uh, uh, digital forms. Okay, so now why you need those all other things which are in between. Okay, so if you take a torch and if you just shine the light, what happens is torch light will be very small in the beginning, but as it falls on a wall which is far away, if you see the size of that torch, it will be bigger. Okay, so if you see So if you take the torch opening, it is very small. But if you see the torch light on a far away wall, it is going to be big. That is because light, when it is traveling, it is going to disperse a lot. Okay. So your X-rays are also light. It is just a form of light. So when they are traveling from tube to sample and some from sample to your detector, they are going to diverge. Okay, they keep diverging. Okay, even if it is in a very good clean environment, still it is they are going to diverge. So for that, what they do, they put some kind of optics. Okay, solar slits, they are in parallel. Okay, so they are parallel to the beam. So they are going to cut the beam, or they are going to focus the beam in straight line like this. But the beam which is coming above the sample, so if your beam is following more than this sample, it will be following in the it may fall on the sample holder. If it is falling on the sample holder, then what happens, you'll get a signal from also from the sample holder, which will be normally some quartz or some stainless steel. Okay, so you want to avoid that. So what you do is, you want to restrict that beam only up to your sample. So that is why you use what we call as divergence rates. Okay. So same thing for other thing. Okay. So the one which is getting diffracted, it is again conditioned by using receiving slits and solar slit. Okay. So one is in the perpendicular direction, other one is in the parallel direction. So it will. This is just to condition your beam. Okay. So just to make them focused to some point. Okay. Then this monochromator, it is optional. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the monochromator. It may be optional. It may be present, it may not be present, doesn't matter. Okay, so I will explain why you need that. Okay, in the next slide. So this is the normally the components of your X-ray diffractometer. Okay, so now how to generate X-rays. So this is you know already. Okay, so you what you do is, you take a filament, you apply some voltage to the filament. So this filament is going to give some electrons, and these electrons, when they hit some metal, okay, then what happens? It will start giving some light, fluorescent light, which is nothing but your X-rays. And these X-rays are going to be coming out. Okay, so in the previous part, whatever we are seeing here, this is just the X-rays which are coming. We are not seeing the filament or anything. Okay, so X-rays are coming out. So X-rays are coming out from this tube. Okay, so they are conditioned to come to fall on the your sample. Okay, so this is how you make the X-ray to fall. Okay, so but when you make this or when you uh, I think okay, so but if you take the X-ray which is coming out, it will have this kind of characteristics. Okay, so this is in the intensity of light. Okay, so when you say wavelength of copper, I will explain you in the next thing. So this will all have k alpha, k alpha 1, k alpha 2, and then k beta. Okay, so this will have all these lines. What is the function of your uh, okay? So what is the function of uh, your filter is, so we have mentioned something called filter. The filter will help you to remove this k beta. Okay, we don't want k beta, so that k beta is used by filters. So normally what happens, you just put a piece of metal. Okay, for example, if I'm using a copper X-ray tube, then I put very thin iron plate or nickel plate, a nickel plate in front of your in the beam of this X-rays. Then what happens, k beta would be cut off. Okay, you get only k alpha 1, alpha 2. Then how do you get rid of alpha 2? You can get rid of alpha 2 just being a monochromator. Okay, but the problem is, you won't get monochromator in all the X-ray diffractometers. Okay? In most of the diffractometers what you use in labs, they will be having both k alpha 1 and alpha 2. Because if I cut k alpha 2, then the intensity of light which is falling on the sample will be very, very less. So then you have to collect data for a long time. Okay, so most of the people, they don't want that. They want to get quick sample analysis. So what they normally do, they don't keep this monochromator, but filter will be there. If you don't put filter, then you will have more multiple peaks. Okay, so this is why you have this what is it, filter and monochromator. So monochromator you don't have to worry. So if I put monochromator, then what happens? If I take copper, so copper, white copper is very easily available, and also if you take X-ray tubes uh, made by copper, it will be cheaper, or they are more economical compared to any other metals. Okay, so this is why copper is used in all the places, or most of the labs. Okay, laboratory. So if I put the filter, sorry, if I put the filter, then K beta is removed. Okay, then I get only K alpha 1 and alpha 2. So if you take for copper, the K alpha 1 is 1.5405 angstroms. Okay, so this peak will be around some this point. Okay, then K beta will be slightly higher. Okay, 1.54 1.54439. And then if you take this beta, it is around 1.36. Okay, for copper it will be around 1.36. So you have three different wavelengths. You are cutting one wavelength, you are leaving two. Okay, if you don't use a monochromator. If I use a monochromator, then what I'm doing, I'm blocking the uh, K alpha 2. So in that case, you get a different K alpha. So again, it's not just 1.5405. Instead, it will be some, there will be some modification. So this depends on the crystal that is used for monochromatization. Okay, so you put a crystal in between to have this cutoff. Okay, so in that case, you are going to reduce a lot of intensity. Okay, already you are cutting K alpha beta. You're sorry, K beta. So you're already reducing the intensity of the incoming X-ray. And if you put one more monochromator, you are going to further reduce. Okay. So in that case, this is what you should remember. Okay. You get very good quality X-ray if you use monochromator, but at the same time, you will get very less intensity. Okay. That means you have to collect data for longer time. Okay. So then there are different sources like silver. The wavelength is different, 0.56. If you use molybdenum, so when I say silver, so only the anode is going to change. Okay, here if I say copper, then they put a copper metal here. Okay, for anode. If I say silver, then they have to put a silver. So now you know, if I use a silver X-ray tube, then the cost will be very very high. Even the same for molybdenum, because I have to put a pure molybdenum on this part. Okay, same thing for cobalt, iron, and chromium. So you just replace this with the respective metals. Okay, then you get different wavelength. Okay, so we will see why you need that wavelength. Okay, so this is one of the example. Okay, why we need a different source. So for example, this is uh, English penny. English penny is like your coin. So this is you take this coin, you put it in a X-ray diffractometer, you take a scan. Okay, so if you just take the scan on this penny or on this coin, you get this peaks which normally you can fit it with copper or copper metal. Okay, it is coated with copper. So copper, this you can index with copper. Okay, if I remove the first layer, so what they have done, some I have given the reference here. Okay, what they did, they removed the first top layer, that is they remove copper layer. Inside it is just iron. Okay, so they do the scan again in the same instrument, same setting. They have not changed anything. Okay, so they have used the same settings. Then what happens? You can see here in the first case, when it's copper, you get around 3,500 counts. Okay, it's very high counts. But for the same time, same settings, if you do on the inner part, which is your iron, you get 400. It is almost decreasing by 10 times. Okay, so from almost like 4,000 to 400, it is decreasing so much. Okay, why this is happening? It is happening because, so your iron, it is having high fluorescence. You can see the background has gone up. Okay, so in the first case, background is almost close to zero, but here it is gone up. Gone up means because your iron is giving out some fluorescence. So this is the reason why you get this. Okay, and if you take the sorry, If you take the intensity, it is decreasing. Okay, so these are things you should know. What happens when you do some different sources. So how do you get a good uh, X-ray diffraction for iron samples? If you are doing a iron sample, then in that case it is better to use a different source. Okay, so in the previous case, as I told, you can either use cobalt or chromium or molybdenum. Okay, so instead of copper, you can use either cobalt or some other source. In that case, you can get better results. You can get good background, which is almost flat. Here it is too much noise. Okay, uh, if I use a different source, then I get a better X-ray diffractogram. Okay, then there is one more reason why you use different source. So this is for cerium oxide. I have taken X-ray diffraction with copper radiation. So I am showing the same what is it, two theta range for both. Okay, so for the lower one, it is with copper radiation. So how many peaks I get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 peaks. I get 8 peaks. The wavelength is around 1.54 nanometers or 1.54 angstroms. Okay. So in the topper one, I did the same thing. Use molybdenum source. So lambda is half of it, which is 0.74. In that case, how many peaks I get? I get more peaks. So if I get more peaks, that means I can do fitting for these more peaks. It is like if you take the X-ray your ritual refinement, it is nothing but it is a least square fitting method. Okay. If I have more number of data points, I can get better fitting. That means I get good reliable fitting. If I have less points, then what happens? The reliability will be less. Okay. So that is the reason. If I change the source, then what happens? I can get more peaks, more data points. Okay. So this is one of the use. There is one more use. Then why do you use higher radiation? Okay, higher wavelength radiation. So I told from copper to molybdenum, but what? Why you need chromium instead of copper? Okay. So for that again, I will show here. Okay. So if you see this peak, just this peak, if you can see, it is having some. It is not just one peak; it is two peaks. But as this wavelength is very less, they are very close to each other. So instead of 0.74, if I use 2.2 or 2.3 lambda, then what happens? This is have more width. Okay, that means I can see two clear peaks. So that is the reason you can go for higher wavelength. Okay, so these are the things that you normally have to know when you're doing with the different radiation. Okay, or different X-ray source. Okay, so now this is divergence how it looks. Okay, so this is the slits which are going to be used. Okay, so there will be different size. So you can see they will be having very the opening will be very small. Okay, and if I use smaller slits, you get good resolution. Resolution means you get two peaks separated very well. Okay, if there are two very close by peaks, they you can see those peaks very clearly. Okay, but at the same time, the intensity is going to reduce because you're giving uh, very less uh, X-ray to fall on the sample. So you get less X-ray to the detector. Okay, detector will get less X-rays. So the intensity is really less. Okay, then in that case you have to collect for long time. If I use smaller slit, but if I use large slit, what happens? I get very good intensity. So instead of 30 minutes, I can do it in 15 minutes or maybe 10 minutes. Okay, I get good intensity, but your peaks won't be very well defined in the sense they'll be very broad. Okay, so that I'm going to show. Okay, in the next few slides. Okay, so this is next thing. What you're supposed to take care is your step size. Okay, so if you have some peaks in between. This if I take the 2 theta range is something like 2 degrees. So from here to here it is just 2 degrees. And if I take only 10 points, then what happens? You will get 10 points. It may give you only 2 peaks. Okay. If your symmetry is less, means like instead of cubic, if you are going from cubic to tetrahedral, tetrahedral to orthorhombic, orthorhombic to monoclinic, then what happens? You will get more reflections. Okay. The number of peaks is going to increase. Okay, So in that case, if I use less number of steps, then what happens, or less number of data points, then I may not get all the information of the sample. Okay, so you can see here they are increasing the number of steps, okay, or they're decreasing the step size. That means they're increasing the number of points in between. Okay, so if you go to this uh, last peak or last curve, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see 5 peaks. But if you take the first curve, it is hardly 2 peaks. Okay, so this is why you should take care of the step size. So normally, this again depends on the type of X-ray machine you are using. Okay, if you are having very good X-ray machine, you can go from up to 0.005. Okay, 0.005 degrees. Okay, the step size. That means if I have first point at 0, the next point will be at 0.005. Okay, but normally 0.05 is good. Okay, so if you want for a good, very good data, 0.05 is good. And if you want to do very good refinement, 0.01 is also fine. Okay, so you don't have to go to very low step size. Okay, but when you go for step size again, you should collect for longer time. Okay, so the only thing, you should take care of the resolution, you should take care of the intensity, and also you should take care of the step size. Okay, then what is the next thing? Next thing is, as we discussed, you should take care of the right source, which source you are using. Okay, so that I explained in the previous slide. Okay, so I'm going to skip that because already uh, next one is, you should have a decent signal to noise ratio. Okay, so here these two, if you see here, these two are the two scans for the same sample. Okay, for the first one I did only for 10 minutes. So for the lower one, which is in red, I did scan only for 10 minutes. For the second one, I did scan for 45 minutes. Okay, so here you can see, if you take the first red one, there is a lot of noise in the sense there is a lot of variation in the points or in the signal. But if you take the second one, the blue one, it is very smooth and can clearly distinguish the peaks. Okay, so sorry, just give me a moment. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, uh, so uh, if I take for longer time, then you can see the quality of data is better. Okay, you can distinguish the peaks very well. So here you can see, for example, this small peaks in the first case, I cannot even see the peaks. Okay, this small peak, later I can see it's very clear. Okay, so these are the things you need to take care when you're doing a collection of data. Okay, so next okay, so next, solar slits. So what happens if I use solar slits? So there are three different examples. Okay, here. So first one is with very small, with wide gap. Okay, so solar slits is nothing but there are some copper plates. Okay, or copper thin foils. They are stacked one above another. Okay, and you can you have normally they give 2 3 solar cells with a diffractometer. Only difference is the gap between these foils will be different. Okay, so in this case, in the first one, the gap is slightly more. So in that case, what happens? You get some peak like this. It may be, you may assume this is a single peak. Okay, but if you reduce a little bit the gap between the two plates, you can see there is two peaks almost. Okay, and if you further reduce the gap between the thing, then what happens? You can clearly distinguish the peaks. Okay, so these are the things that you have to take care. A lot of people, they won't mind because they just give the sample, they take data whatever is given. Okay, so they may give data something like this. You may feel okay, this is just one peak. Okay, then your analysis may not be 100%. Okay, so that is why it's better you if you take care of this. But again, if I use a smaller gap, what happens is the intensity is going to reduce. Okay, so you have to take for longer time. So these are some of the things you need to take care when you are going to do the uh, collection, data collection. So how do you say is a good quality data? So see, these things you don't have to do for all the samples. For example, if you're trying to prepare a sample by varying different conditions, like for example, if you're doing a sample by solid state method, you are trying to heat or just to treat it at different temperatures. Okay, maybe around 800, 1200. You are trying to form some compound, for example, barium titanate. Okay, so in that case, if you take some data at 800, it may not have formed. It is not a pure phase. Okay, so in that case, you can just do very quick scan, 10 minutes scan with all big slits, all big solar slits, all these things. It is fine. Okay, but once you're sure, like it is a pure phase, then what you can do, you can ask your operators to scan for a longer time with better optics. Okay, so like the previous one. So, for example, in this case, if I want to know whether it is forming, then the red one is sufficient for me. But if I want to do very good data treatment, like your ritual refinement or some profile matching, then it is better to have the one which is in blue, not like in the red. Okay, red is not good for refinement. Okay, so that is why you should take care. So for publication, if you are doing some 10 samples, maybe you are going to publish only one sample. Okay, you are doing so many other trials. So in that case, you can do good data only for that one sample. You don't have to do for all 10 samples. Okay, so because even machine time is very important. Okay, so for good quality data, what are the things you should have? You should have high intensity. Intensity should be good. You should have better resolution. Better resolution in the sense you should see the peaks, well-defined peaks. Okay, you should not see something like this. Instead, you should see the peaks, differentiate the peaks very well. Okay, and then you should have good signal to noise ratio. This is the example. Okay, so for example, in case of your red, the noise is too much compared to signal, but I want more signal compared to noise. So that is, then in that case I have to go to the blue one. Okay, so these are things you should take care. Okay, for the good quality data. Then you can go for next your data treatment. Okay, so I will try to cover these things very quickly. Okay, so now so I told, so your sample here. Okay, and then X-ray is coming from this end, from the right, sorry, from the left. Okay, so X-rays are coming here, they are falling on the sample, and then you are collecting the diffracted data, diffracted X-rays in the slit. Okay, actually connected to an amplifier, and it is connected to so amplifier, what it does, will, this is, if it is a photo detector, photo counter, it can be a gas counter or some photo detector. So then this, it will collect a number of tons, and then it will convert into electrical signal, and then electric signal will be converted some data. Okay, in terms of intensity and those. Okay, so now, as I told, for this geometry we call it as Bragg-Brentano focus geometry. Okay, so Bragg-Brentano focus geometry is the geometry that I explained. Your X-ray tube is moving, your detector is also moving. Okay, so this so your X-ray tube is moving like this, and then detector is moving in the other way. Okay, so this has to be actually rotated by maybe 180 degree, okay, or maybe 175 degree, something like that, okay, because your sample won't be like this. So this is just for explaining they put, okay, this you can find in Kaliti textbook, okay. So X-ray is falling here, then you're getting the uh, uh, diffracted data in the detector. So now if you see the recording, okay, so what do you see in the recording? You see recording something like this. So this is the data for NaCl crystal, sodium chloride crystal. So you get some peaks like this. Now what to do with this? So you get you got very good data. So the signal is good, noise is less. You have a good peak size, all these things. So now what to do with this? So this is where you're going to learn things. Okay, so this is the main focus of your present workshop. Okay, so now we'll see what. So if you have some question, I can take some question right now. Is there any question?
Sir, hello.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir. There is a question from Minu Pius. How do
Okay.
we adjust the amount of oxygen as you mentioned in SRFeO3x? Is it
Ah.
by changing the molarity, deviating from the stoichiometry? And how do we estimate the value of X so as to get the value of O as
Hmm.
2.8 bar, 2.5 bar, 3?
Okay. So this actually it depends on the your synthesis condition. Okay. So for example, in this case, Fe 4 plus, to keep it 4 plus, you need to work in high pressure. You have to make this in high pressure X-ray. Sorry, high oxygen pressure uh, instrument. Okay. But if you don't do this, if you just try to prepare this in a normal atmosphere, you will end up around 2.8. And how you know this it is 2.8? You can do more salt because it is iron, so you can do more salt titration. You get the oxygen stoichiometry. Okay, and
Okay,
also like as I told, the structure is a bit different. If it is 3, then it is cubic. If it is 2.8, then it is around something like tetragonal or orthorhombic. 2.5 lower symmetry. Okay, so that is where you can use X-ray also as one of the tools, because everyone cannot do more salt, because most of the people, if you are from physics background, is very difficult. I am a physics background, but somehow I learned a little bit of chemistry, so I can do more salt, but everyone cannot do more salt. So this is just by synthesis method. Okay, ma'am, you can go for this.
there's a question from Prima C. Thomas. How is X-ray diffraction studies useful in polymer samples?
Polymer samples, okay. So if it is pure polymer sample, then you can know the amorphous quantification. But again, it's not as simple as diffraction, X-ray diffraction. Okay, X-ray you're doing by diffraction, but you can know the crystallinity, the order of crystallinity, by using some different methods. So for that, I will share you how to do it. Okay, so there is a step-by-step procedure you can do. So how to do a crystallinity studies for amorphous or polymer samples. Okay, so if you take a polymer,
Okay,
it is not highly crystalline. It is mostly amorphous. But still, there are methods where you can do get the uh, crystallinity quantification. Okay, so that I can share. It is beyond this workshop. I think it's separate thing. Okay.
okay, sir. There is a question from Sino Thomas. What's the recommended signal to noise ratio for a reasonable refinement?
Yes, anything better than 5 to 10% is good. So this it depends on your peaks. Okay, so if you, for example, if you are seeing this screen, if you take this 311 peak, if you can clearly distinguish the peak, then is good one. Okay, so for example, this data what you are seeing on the screen is not having really flat background. You can see there is a lot of noise here, right? Still, I am able to distinguish my peaks, so it's good. So maybe 5 to anything between 5 and 10 is good.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Dr. Padmakumar H. In JCPDS, most samples are reported for CUK alpha radiation. If it is from another source, how we can distinguish between them?
That I will show. So you can switch between. What you can do is you don't have to compare the uh, 2 theta. So normally we'll do this. We'll do this exercise. Okay. Normally what we do once we get this X-ray diffraction, what to do next? First thing is you have to do the phase analysis. This is what we are going to do. So normally you take the peak 2 theta peak. Instead of that, you can also go for Q. Okay. So if you're going for Q, or you can go if you're going for different. So I will show that in the example. So it's fine. Okay, I will cover that.
Okay, sir. There is a question from Deeba is, sir, why high angle data for inorganic samples?
Okay. So I think I skipped that. So I'll go back. Okay. So I'll just go back. So I think yeah, I was too fast in that. Can you remember where it was? I forgot. Uh, I think somewhere. Okay, here. Okay. So for inorganic, normally if you are taking inorganic, again it depends. Okay, so if you are taking like TaO2 and all those things, you will start seeing the peaks only after 10-15 degree 2 theta. Okay, below that you will not get any peaks. So you don't have to start from zero all the time. So in case of inorganic materials, you can start from 10 or 5 or 10. That's sufficient. Okay. So that is why you need to go for high angle. High angle means maybe around 100 degree, whatever is your instrument. Normally, I used to do up to 120 in Bruker or fanatical, but it depends. So if you have more theta, sorry, more peaks. So this is what I explained in case of your molybdenum. Where Okay, so here, so if I instead of stopping at 90, if I go up to 120, I may get some 4 more peaks. So if I have more peaks, that means I can get more information. Okay, on the phase. So that is why for inorganic, normally you do for high angle. Okay, but if you take organic, most of your peaks will be vanishing by 30-35 degrees. Okay, so I have done this organics in some cases. So in that case, you should start at very low angle, maybe around 2.5 or 5. So if you are doing polymers or some like graphene or something like that, your peak would be finished by 20 degree or less, maybe just around 30. Okay, you won't have any peaks more than 30 degree. Okay, so in that case, instead of taking entire range, even in for this example, whatever I'm showing here, I can take data from 10 to 80 for longer time. Okay, instead of spending energy for this flat area. Okay, so that is why inorganic try to take this is just to save your time and your what is that energy. Okay, so if you for inorganic is better just do only for high angle data, but for organic you have to do only for low angle, because after 35 you'll not get any peaks. So normally this is again depending on the your unit cell. Okay, unit cell in case of organic is very very large. So unit cell means it is reverse of your D parameter. Okay, so that is why it is linked. Okay, so this is how uh, that is the reason we are going to have this. Okay, so next.
Okay, sir, there is a question from Dr. Danya I. Is low angle and high angle data means the incident angle for XRD?
Yes, yes, it is just the incident angle of XRD. Okay, so theta I is going to change because um, just I will come back to the slide. Okay, okay. So if I take this right now, this is at the angle of incidence is around 20 degree. Okay, So angle of diffraction is around, I guess, same 20 degree. But if this X-ray tube is somewhere here, then angle of incidence is around 40 degree. So in the same thing, your diffraction will be somewhere here. 40 plus 40, it is 80. Okay. So this 2 theta is nothing but it is just the position of your X-ray and the detector. So as you change the position of X-ray and detector, you are going to collect the data. So that is your 2 theta. Okay, that is how you get different angle peaks.
Okay, okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Prima C. Thomas. How is X-ray diffraction studies useful in polymer samples?
Yeah, polymer. That's what. Like, if you are using polymer sample, you can go for quantifying the crystallinity. And in case if you are doping something in your polymer, for example, you are taking a polymer and you are doping some zinc oxide or iron oxide or some other oxide, zinc oxide, then you can know whether your doped inorganic material is present in your polymer or not. Okay. Normally, polymer is it is amorphous, mostly amorphous. But as you introduce the dopant, you get signal from that dopant. Okay. So those things you can do, or if you're just trying a polymer with different crystallinity, you are trying to increase the crystallinity of the polymer to improve the uh, your mechanical strength of the polymer. You can again do the quantification, crystallinity quantification. So this is normally done in most of the uh, pharmaceuticals company. So those things they are done.
Okay. Sir, there is a question from Swati. Sir, speaking of the phase purity, can a sample with a single phase be called as curved and a sample with a multi-phase be called as alloy?
It's very difficult. So it is again see, alloy means, see, I showed you something here. Okay, alloy, it can be, so where is that first? Okay, so if you see this, so intermetallics, if you see this nickel, manganese, gallium, it is called as Heusler alloy. So this is a half Heusler, this is a full Heusler. Okay, so alloying, it depends. Like I would rather call it as composite if it is not going. Like if I'm trying to introduce nickel into manganese gallium lattice, then I may, if nickel is going into the lattice, then it can be called as alloy or dope sample, something like that. But if it is not going, then I would preferably call it as composite. But again, it depends. So there is a big debate about this composite alloying and all those things. Doping, for example, doping composites and alloying. So in my terms, I would say, like, if it is I will show you, like, in next few slides, the doping and the composite. So I will show you. So alloying it depends how, on what prefix you are taking, and so that we can discuss. If they want to discuss, we can discuss later.
Sir,
So
there
you
is
have
a
any question?
question. Sir, there is
Hmm.
few more questions. There is a question from Dr. Amita. What application does this have in life science or zoology research?
Lifetime,
Life science or zoology research?
lifetime or zoology? Okay,
Life science,
zoology, there
life
is
science or
life
zoology
science.
research.
Yes. Life, I don't know. Life science, there is a lot of things, because even your virus, coronavirus, they were trying to take the crystal structure of that. Okay, so even your DNA, they have done the crystal structure. That is how you can know the arrangement of your molecules, lipids, whatever you call. Okay, so when it comes to zeolite, it's very much useful. Okay, so in geology, there's a lot of application of X-rays. So if you want to know what is the composition in your zeolite or something like that, you can still do X-ray diffraction. That itself is a big area. So I can share that because even in industries they do that, because before going taking the raw material, they do a lot of X-ray diffraction. to quantify what are the possible phases that you have in a mineral. So that those things is a big area. So there's a large application in geology. Okay.
Okay. Sir, there's a question from Agam Chikara. When I perform the X-ray diffraction of my crystalline data, maximum intensity vary every time. Also, there is a slight variation with the same sample. Why it is so?
Yes, I will address this because this is what when I say good data, so good quality data, there are there are some parameters that you care when you go for data collection. Okay, not just this geometry whatever I told. So I told you have to use smaller solar cells, you have to use filters, all those things. Apart from that, the way you prepare the sample it makes a very big impact on the data. So that also I'm going to cover. Okay, so I will explain that.
Okay. So there's a question from Jocelyn Elizabeth Abraham. How will we know which peak corresponding to which plane?
This you have to do phase analysis. That is what we are going to do in the next thing. Okay, phase analysis will give which plane, which. So maybe before it was very difficult, but now you have so many. What is this? You have a lot of softwares. So we are going to learn one of those software. That is your QuellX. Through QuellX, I will show how to which plane and which phase.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Meenu Pais. When we try to synthesize composite sample of a metal and metal oxide, how do we distinguish whether the metal is in doped form or in composite form?
Yes, if it is doped in that sense, what happens? You won't get any extra peaks. Okay, if it is a just if it is not going into the structure, if it is just staying in your sample somewhere, then it will show as a different peaks. Okay, it will show as a extra peak. So this I will show again. I will take example of titanium oxide and I will show you those things.
Okay. Sir, there's a query from K. Srilata. Sir, not able to open zip files. Please help.
That I will do. Don't worry. We'll do it
Okay,
in the. We still have four more after this. We have still four more, so don't worry. So I will. What I will do. Let me finish this part because then in the afternoon at least we'll start with profile matching. Okay. So there are few more
okay,
slides. I will try to cover it. Okay.
okay.
Okay. Okay. So I think yes. Okay. So now you have got the X-ray diffractogram. So some you have some peaks. Now what is the next step? So next step is so you will have these questions. What is the meaning of line appearing at certain angle? Why some peaks have less intensity and why they have few have high intensity? Okay. So this uh, related with the peaks, there are different parameters. Okay, the first parameter is the position. If you take the position of the peak, that will give the information about the symmetry, about the d spacing. As I told already in the previous case, if you take the d100, that means it is related with the unit cell size. Okay, so that is your d spacing. So that will give about the unit cell parameter, and then if you take the intensity, so this give the information about the motif or molecule or atom. What kind of atom is present in the motif? Okay. For example, in case of copper and iron, which where I showed the example of a coin. Okay. You could see that copper was giving high intensity compared to iron. Iron was giving less intensity. So this gives what kind of atom is present in a material. Okay, and also phase. You can do the phase quantification based on the intensity. Okay. Next, when it comes to width, so the width of the sample will give more information about the crystallinity. If it is sharp, then that means your sample is highly crystalline. If it is less sharp, it is broad, then it means it is less crystalline. It can also give information about the crystallite size. Okay, so this is what we are going to again do. Okay, crystallite size, strain, and disorder. So these things are depending on the shape of or the width of the peaks. Okay, XRD peaks. So these things you should remember. Okay, so position means it gives unit cell parameter or the symmetry. Okay, then if it is intensity, then we are talking about the the type of atom which is present in a unit cell. Okay, and then width will give crystallinity, amorphous crystallinity, defects, and then the strain and stress. These things are going to be addressed by using your width, okay, or shape of the peak. Okay, so there are different methods of analyzing the data. Okay, so I will give two. Broadly there are two. One is the traditional approach, and there is the second one is direct space approach. Okay, so this direct space approach is very good for single crystal, and if you are using some, if you are trying to grow a new crystal with new symmetry, then I would ask you to go for this direct space approach. Okay, this can be done in Jana. Okay, but if you are already working on some known what is it, structures, then you will just do the traditional method. So in our workshop, we'll use more the traditional method, not the direct space. Okay, direct space is it's a little bit tricky, and also it is time consuming. Okay, so we'll go one by one. Okay, so when we come to the traditional approach, what you do is you just take a X-ray diffraction, powder X-ray diffraction. Okay, preferably powder X-ray diffraction. Then what you do is you check for the quality of data. Quality of the data means whether it is having good intensity, whether you can distinguish the peaks, whether your noise is less. That is about the quality of the data. Then what you do is you determine the peak position and intensity. Okay, so then what you do, you just do a perform a Libé fitting. Libé fitting is nothing but it is a profile fitting. Okay, Libé or profile fitting. There is one more poly fitting, but we don't worry about that. We do only the Libé fitting, or you can do the profile matching. Okay, so from this, in principle, there should be two. I missed it. Okay, there is two ways. One thing is you just do a profile match. Profile means match means you just take your data, you try to put it along with your reported data, and then you see whether it is a pure phase or not, or it is a impure phase. Okay, so this you are going to do it in profile matching by using Qualx. Okay, the other one is you can do this kind of Libé fitting, and you can also find a symmetry and unit cell parameters. Okay, there are two methods of doing it. One, by either comparing with the reported data, or by doing it yourself. Okay, just doing by some fitting. Okay, next, what you do is you take this Libé fitted data, then you introduce your atoms, atomic position, Wyckoff position. Okay, that is what we call as Wyckoff position. Then also you give occupancy, anisotropy, all these things, and you do a retool refinement. So if you do a retool refinement, then what you get is you get the complete crystal structure. Okay, so this is the traditional method. So ritual method is nothing but it is a model based method. So you take a model which is already published or which is already existing, you take your data, then you try to fit this data with that model, and if you get very good fitting, that means you are solving the crystal structure. So this is a traditional approach for mostly which is for inorganic compounds. Okay, but if you come for organic or single crystals, so normally what you do is you have to go for uh, this direct space approach. Okay, so if it is a new, very new, completely new structure, then you have to do this. If not, even if it is a single crystal, you just crush it, you take a powder XRD, and you can do this traditional approach. Okay, but if it is a new, completely new thing, then you have to go for this kind of direct space approach. Okay, so in this method, you have a lot of things to do, like you have to do Monte Carlo, or simulated annealing or grid search, something like this. Okay, it is more of modeling. Okay, so completely modeling your data. Okay, and then you will find a solution for that. But this is not easy for a beginner. So for a beginner, I would always suggest to go for a traditional approach. So this is what we are going to do in our workshop. We will go for this traditional approach. Then, if once you get used to this traditional approach, then you can try yourself. This kind of direct space approach. Okay, maybe I will make a quick video tutorial for this, and then I will give you the link for that. Okay, so if someone is interested to do that, they can do it. Okay, so but it's not good for a beginner. It's very difficult. Then you may stop learning how to do crystal structure. Okay, so that is why we will do only the traditional approach. Okay, so next, this is just a summary of the whatever we did. Okay, solving a structure from powder diffraction data. Okay, so if you want to arrive at the crystal structure, it is like a maze. Okay, you have played maze. You can enter from some one place, then you have to go and you have to find your crystal structure. This is your crystal structure. Okay, so there are different ways to do it. So first, what you do, you start with a polycrystalline sample. Either you do a lab X-ray, synchrotron X-ray, neutron X-ray, sorry, neutron diffraction. Any of this diffraction data, you collect a data, and then you do indexing to get a space group, and then this is your indexing form. Okay, you either go Lebesgue or Pole. So we'll do Lebesgue in our case. Then what happens, you can go this is again your this is equivalent to your Pole. Okay, either you do this Pole or indexing, or you can do just take a database, you just match it with the database. Okay, so these two are same. So you can either follow this route or this route, doesn't matter. Okay, you just go to one of them, and then finally what you do is you have this uh, what is it, ritual refinement. Okay, so you can use this direct space or model based. In our case, it is model based. So we are going to take a existing model, put it in the software. Okay, and then what you do is you just do the ritual refinement, you will get the crystal structure. Okay, so this is just like your this is like a path. Okay, so we have almost reached the Pole fitting. Okay, Pole or your what is this database. Okay, so we will do these two things in the afternoon. Okay, and then on Monday we will try to do the ritual refinement. Okay, so this is what ritual refinement means. You just put all the model base. So this model we will find it in this part. Okay, so we'll be almost there to get our crystal structure. Okay, so is it fine with this session? I think I can stop at this point. Okay, so I'll just play this very small video. Okay, so I think this will summarize whatever we did till now. So, if you have any question, you can ask me. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes, madam. Can you?
Sir, there is few questions on the chat box.
Okay, okay.
Sir, from Anubama K, can peak intensity variations have anything to do with the morphology of the sample?
Morphology. Okay. Morphology. If it is, if you're changing maybe from uh, the crystallite size, if it is changing, then yes, your intensity is going to decrease. So if it is highly crystalline, that means if it is a polycrystalline sample, then your intensity is more. If you are having some nanoparticles instead of polycrystalline, then the intensity is very very less. It is mainly because you see, as you know, diffraction is from the bulk sample. Okay, so if you have a single your polycrystalline, that means you have bigger grain size. So that means when you have the diffraction, the diffraction is coming from lot of atoms at the same time. But if you go for nanoparticles, the nanoparticles are very scattered all over. So if you take the diffraction, it is coming from very less number of group of atoms in case of nanoparticles. So this morphology again, if you are having a spheres, microspheres, that means it is not equivalent to a grain which is in micron size, 1 micron, okay, or maybe a 10 micron, 15 micron, 20 micron, okay. So if you go for high micron or high grain size, then you get better intensity. And if you go for lower morphology, like if you go for microspheres or nanospheres or nanoparticles, then what happens? You'll get less intensity. It is related. Yes.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Kavya. Sir, to take the XRD data of solid polymer electrolyte samples, what is the range of angle theta I should take?
Solid. I think you should. It's better if you go for low angle. I don't know. You can what you can do. You can just do 10-minute scan. You start from 2.5 up to 35. But if you're embedding so many inorganic particles, then you should go maybe up to uh, 70, 80. So anything if you have inorganic, then it should be up to 80 minimum 80 degrees.
Okay. Sir, there is a question from Dr. M. Sharavana. How to find volts bar defects using XRD?
Yes, I think it's very complicated. Okay, so we will see like if I can address that because it is not that easy. So we'll see if I have time, I will do it.
Okay, sir, there is a question from Dr. Varsha. Is it possible to do refinement in polymer-based filling samples?
Yes, there are different methods. So for polymers, it's not direct ritual refinement. There is something called as uh, relative intensity ratio based refinement. Okay, so for that you should have uh, even the data collection and everything is completely different. You can do. It's not like it's not doable. You can do, but it's mostly profile matching, not the ritual matching.
Okay. Sir, there's a question from Reshma. What is the significance of getting different intensity for peaks to different samples prepared by same technique?
How you keep your sample. So how you are preparing the sample, it makes it will give a lot of impact on what you get. Okay, so if you are polycrystalline means they are randomly oriented crystals. But in case if you are having some orientation during preparation, for example, if I'm trying to grow some nanoparticles by hydrothermal method, I'm putting some reagent which may act as a your growth agent. Okay, so instead of nanoparticles, you have nanocrystals with preferred orientation. Okay, so in that case, if I do the X-ray diffraction, I get more preferred oriented peaks, so that again we'll see that. Okay, and also if you are trying to put the sample in different ways, you will get different orientation. So your intensity is going to change.
Okay, sir. Sir, there's a question from Asha Paul. How XRD is useful in stress strain properties of polymer samples?
Stress strain sample. Okay. So I have to check that because polymer itself is not crystalline. So when you are talking about non-crystalline, it's already amorphous. So it's very difficult to give a quantification. In that case, stress, again, what you are supposed to do is you should take, there are methods to do it, but it takes a lot of time. So, and also it is a systematic study you have to do. You take a scan for unstrained sample or unstrained polymer. Then you introduce some known strain by applying load or something, and then again take a scan for that. So that will give. That is how normally they do for polymer samples. But again, it's not 100% because it's not crystalline. So it is again just some quantification based on some fitting. Okay, profile fitting.
Okay, sir. Sir, there's a question from Dr. Deba S. Sir, can you mention about the instrumental error and standardizing?
Instrumentation error, it's already taken care by your service persons. So normally when someone is taking a X-ray machine, there is a service person who, when they install, they will be given some silicon powder. Okay, SI just single, very pure NIST. NIST is your National Institute of Standards. So they will give powder or maybe a disc kind of thing, and they would have already aligned the your peak position according to that. Okay. So as you know, there are two moving circles. One circle is moving your X-ray tube, other circle is moving the your detector. So how do you know it is at zero, and how do you know it is the exact position? This is done by uh, your technician. So the person who come to service the machine, they normally what they do is they do this kind of calibration, and then they will give you the machine. So this is, everything is already calibrated. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Asha Paul. Sir, one of my experiment from XRD, one of the plane completely diminished in intensity. Is it intercalation?
Yes, it is related with the orientation. You may have some preferred orientation. So in that case, you will not see that. So I will show those things in the next slide. So in the afternoon, I will show that part. Okay. So when you have some preferred orientation, then you will not see that
Okay.
those peaks.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Sapnam. How can we identify the formation of substitutional and interstitial solid solutions from XRD?
Yeah, phase analysis. You do phase analysis. So we'll do that phase analysis. You can
Okay.
know whether it is. This is what, like, most of the questions, whether you know whether it is doped, or it is just as a composite, or if it is a composite. What are the things that those things we'll learn in the afternoon. We'll do it.
Oh, okay, sir. Sir, there is a question from Dr. Amida. In water testing of heavy metals like chromium, etc., or testing any other parameters like fluoride, chloride, etc., does these studies have an application somewhere?
If it is a chromium, but again, detection limit. So if you are talking, I don't know what is the sample, because if you're talking about some contaminant in some ways, then there should be sufficient amount of chromium which should be diffracting the X-rays. If it is very less, like if it is some parts per billion or parts per million, you will never see that in the X-rays. So for that, you should go for either ICP or something like that.
Okay. Sir, there is a question from Rega Koshi. Sir, what is the reason for shift in the peak of nanoparticles when it is reinforced in a polymer matrix?
Shifting peak, it may be related. I don't know. I have to check that. So I will check that.
Okay.
I will check
Sir, there is a
this part. Okay.
question. There is a question from Dr. Danya I. What's the promising error of XRD data while XRD indexing is done using softwares in direct space approach for organic material?
Direct space analysis is completely different. You are not going to do indexing. Instead, you are going to find the atomic possible atomic position of a given atom. Okay, so in case of your direct approach, you already take the position of atoms. So I will show how to get. I will show you how to get that. So once you know the position of atom, you're just going to put that. Okay. But if you're taking a direct space, you don't know the position. The XYZ, whatever Sundarshan sir he was telling, Wyckoff positions, you don't know the exact position. Where is the position of atom? So in that case, you have to do direct spacing. So those things you can do it uh, in the Monte Carlo or some other algorithms.
Okay, sir, I think the questions are over.
Okay. So maybe I think we can now take a break for 40 minutes or something, and we will
Okay, sir.
start around 2.
We'll start around 2 p.m., sir, if it is
Yes,
okay.
yes. Yeah, for me it's fine,
Okay,
but I don't know for you, all of you. Yeah.
okay, okay. Okay, so we can wind up the forenoon session. Participants, please note the link for the quizzes for morning session will be sent to your mailbox at 2:30 p.m. Submit it before 8 p.m. today. The afternoon session will begin at sharp 2 o'clock. We will get back you soon. Thank you.
Okay. So I will stop the sharing. I think I will start again after we come back.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,